Good morning, friends, and hello, y'all. It's Monday. It's 8 a.m. I'm gonna be getting ready for work here soon, but I just thought I'd do a quick check-in and say what I'm currently reading. I've been working on The Witch's Daughter by Paula Braxton. I think I have about 100 pages left in it. I'm hoping I can finish that and maybe one more book before the reading rush next week. And then I have also been listening to the audiobook for The Likeness by Tana French. I'm about 8 hours in and I'm really enjoying that. This is my cool coffee mug this week. It's heat reactant, so it's kind of starting to fade a little bit because my coffee's getting cold. But it's Spider Gwen. Pretty sure my boyfriend got this for me like 4 years ago when we started dating. I still love it. It's still one of my absolute favorites, so. Hello, friends. So, it's the afternoon on Monday. I've gotten back from work. I just finished filming another video for Friday, past Friday. Yeah, because the video I just filmed will come out before this does. I know time. That's my dog running by. I'm still working through The Likeness. I feel like this is definitely a bit slower build than In the Woods was. I'm enjoying getting to see more of Cassie. We're seeing some of her relationship with her previous boss, Frank, who heads all of the undercover department. What I originally heard about this book was simply that Cassie gets put on a murder case of a victim who looks exactly like her. And while that is technically true, there's more to the story than just that. Along with looking just like Cassie, the victim is actually using a name that Cassie had previously used when she was going undercover. So somehow this woman stole Cassie's undercover identity. It makes it all the weirder where you're not really sure if maybe the murderer was trying to go after Cassie or she really was going after this woman, or if maybe something from the woman's past has come back to haunt her given the fact she was going by a fake name. There's been some undercover work going on. Cassie's been showing us some more of her profiling skills, which I really like and think is very interesting because I love seeing psychology in criminal investigations. I'm a hard Criminal Minds fan, y'all. I also have been working on The Witch's Daughter by Paula Braxton, and I'm liking this more than I thought I would. On Goodreads, the top like 3 reviews weren't great, so my expectations had kind of dwindled, but this is doing much better than I expected because of that. Definitely mentioned before, the story basically follows this woman whose mother was hanged for witchcraft in the 1600s. She ends up becoming a witch herself and then is basically running away from the warlock who trained her. She is now immortal and lives a pretty lonely life. Thus far, I've seen 3 different timelines. There is the one happening in the 1600s where her mother was hanged for witchcraft. There was a second one in the 1800s where she was working as a doctor. And then also I have seen the 2007, which is the current timeline. She has bonded with this teenage girl who doesn't have a lot of friends named Tegan and has considered taking Tegan under her wing to become her own apprentice. Our main character's name is Elizabeth, but she goes by different variations of nicknames throughout it. For example, in the 1600s, she goes by Bess. In the 1800s, she goes by Eliza. In the 2007, she just went by Elizabeth. The man she is on the run from is the warlock named Gideon. Paula Braxton really wanted you to believe he was a bad guy. Where this first tab is, she actually witnesses him raping a woman. I understood why it was used there, but I think she could have gotten the point across without really doing that. A second rape actually takes place later in the book, so big warning. The second one was kind of used more as a plot device, where the first one was sort of passing and I feel like really we could have done without. I did mark a place in the 1600 timeline where it's kind of just like bad women's anatomy. Obviously it's the 1600s and this is a female author, so like she wrote it that way for a reason, but it just kind of made me chuckle. I think I'm actually onto what I imagine will be the last time period, which is 1917. So I'm interested to see what's gonna happen there. I'll update you guys later.
Hey y'all! So it is Tuesday. I'm giving you guys a little bit of B-roll for my morning. Trying that out, seeing about some new vlogging techniques because I still don't know what I'm really sure I want to do, so experimenting a little bit. I read about 50 pages of The Witch's Daughter last night. I think 1917 might be my favorite timeline we've had so far. Currently, Elizabeth is going by Elise, and she is somewhere in the war zone during World War I. She is working as a nurse and is actually pretty close to the front lines. At one point, she's like right on the front lines. It's definitely been a very emotional point. As a whole, this book has been a lot darker than I expected it to be. We have now handled the plague, we have handled Jack the Ripper, and we're now dealing with World War I. So a lot of death. I've also listened to a few more hours of In the Woods and Not in the Woods. The likeness. Tana French just keeps putting up red herrings in front of me and I'll be like, ooh, suddenly I'm suspicious of this person. And then you'll find something else out and you're like, well, never mind, throw that out the window. Let's look at this person. I need to know. I have like 12 more hours to go through this audiobook. I need to stop watching so much booktube and actually listen to it, but here I am. Am I gonna do it? Probably not. Hey y'all. So I'm taking a quick detour home from work. I'm gonna hit the library to get one of my books for the reading rush. It's like crazy hot out right now. Also, it feels like 106 outside. For my non-American friends, that's about 41 degrees Celsius. And I'm like melting. Yeah. So let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Good morning, y'all. It's Wednesday. Apparently I have a new favorite place that I like to film now, in my office when I'm here alone. So I finished The Witch's Daughter last night. I gotta say, the end of the 1917 storyline definitely gave me mad Wonder Woman vibes, like from the movie. It also kind of broke my heart into a million pieces. Ending of the actual story, I actually really enjoyed. I thought it was solid, and I don't know why a sequel was written, in all honesty. Like, I have no interest in picking up the sequel now because I was totally happy with where the story ended. So I'm gonna just disregard the sequel, and I'm gonna end up having to find a different book with a purple cover to fulfill that prompt on my summer reading bingo, but I'm okay with it. In the end, I really liked this. I think I can understand why some people considered it a bit formulaic, because it seems every time we go back to a previous timeline in Elizabeth's life, we kind of follow the same format where we see what she's doing in this present timeline. We learn a little bit about her life and how she is trying to normalize it in herself. And then inevitably, Gideon is somehow around, we suddenly become suspicious of everyone, and then they end up getting in a fight. I liked getting to see how Elizabeth had changed from the previous timeline. This story definitely reminds me of Circe by Madeline Miller because it has a similar feel of a young witch slowly coming into her power and embracing herself. I enjoy that, but I definitely understand why other people wouldn't. However, I do think where there was a drawback, Circe, we definitely get to see how her personality shifts from when she's very naive to becoming a very jaded woman. Elizabeth didn't have much of a personality overall. When we first meet her, she's definitely a little bit of a spitfire. She's pretty sassy. She sticks up for herself and her family. But after the first timeline, in all honesty, that kind of all eventually falls away. It was hard to connect with her. I enjoyed reading her story and I enjoyed seeing her grow as a witch. I think next I'm going to end up picking up a comic book. I have either Miss Marvel or I went and bought Harley Quinn Volume 3 last weekend. So I'm going back and forth between those. I'll figure that out tonight. Bye!
Hey y'all, it is Thursday. I've gotten back from work and I finished The Likeness by Tana French. Once again, I kind of called the ending, but there was like an additional thing that threw me off. So I'm 2 for 2 on sort of calling the ending, and I'm also 2 for 2 in starting to hate the main character. With this one, it was a little more believable of why Cassie was acting the way she was, because she was working undercover, was literally embodying someone who was not herself, and I could understand why she was starting to forget who she truly was as a detective, more so than I did with Rob in the first one, who wasn't doing that. He still was a detective. He was just being incredibly unprofessional and a bit dense at times. Now that I finished, I realized what was important and what wasn't, and I feel as though I can actually give you guys a deeper summary that won't be too spoilery. So essentially, as I said earlier, Cassie ends up getting called into a case where a woman has been found murdered, and Cassie looks exactly like the victim. Along with that, the victim is actually using the name Cassie once used when she worked in undercover, which is Lexi Madison. This young woman, Lexi, has stolen essentially this identity and is living with a group of 4 other postgraduate students in this small town in Ireland. There's a lot of different avenues that the case ends up having to take because, for example, while she is living with these 4 other people in this house who all could be totally viable suspects, she is actually pregnant. She's living under a false name, so it could be someone from her past. It could have been the child's father. The family that owns the house where they're living is hated by most of the town, and so it could have been something like one of the townspeople ended up killing her. Cassie ends up getting talked into going undercover as Lexi, since they look exactly alike, and pretend as though she hasn't actually died, she was just assaulted. Actually, over time though, Cassie ends up becoming way too uncomfortable with this group of friends and slowly starts to kind of forget who she truly is, which just made me sit there and yell like, what are you doing? However, in the end, we definitely get to see some growth from Cassie when she starts to realize that she's older than all of these college students and starts picking up on distinct differences between herself and Lexi Madison, or the woman who was living as Lexi Madison. I really liked this. It was a very different mystery novel than anything I've ever read before, and although it felt very slow burn, it was still very much intriguing enough that I constantly was wanting to continue and figure out which avenue was I supposed to be following, because like I said, there were so many different directions this case could have gone in. Next up for my physical read, I'm going to pick up Miss Marvel No Normal, and I'm definitely excited for this. I also got another audiobook from my library. I got Sadie by, I really want to say Courtney Summers, but I don't know if that's right. Courtney Summers, I just googled it, it is right. Sadie follows the story of this missing girl, and essentially I believe a podcast is trying to solve the mystery of what happened to her, so it seems that audiobook should be the preferred medium for this. The description mentioned that the podcast was similar to Serial, which is a true crime podcast I have actually listened to myself. I am definitely interested to start listening to Sadie. It's only like 7 hours, so I should probably be able to finish it in the next few days. All right, y'all. So that's it for now. Bye. TGIF friends, I thought I'd give you guys a little update. I actually ended up finishing Miss Marvel No Normal last night. I blasted through it. It's pretty short, so like it wasn't that impressive, but I really enjoyed this. It was super cute. It was a nice spin on like the classic teenager getting their superpowers story, like that of Peter Parker, where he suddenly has superpowers, he isn't sure what to do with them, he can't control them, and then eventually realizes, hey, I could do some good with these, but has to hide it from his family. Exactly what Kamala ended up having to do with this. It was very fun to see this story revamped with a new character. I also enjoyed that this had a lot of little nods towards Kamala's culture because she is Muslim and her family is from Pakistan, so there were little Urdu nicknames here and there, and just different terminology and items from their culture that I wasn't aware of but was learning about in this, and I really liked that. They seemed genuinely authentic and easily worked into the story and not like they were overdoing it. Kamala lives in Jersey City, so not the capital for all superheroes like in New York, but she is a giant superhero fan. I really enjoyed that. I could identify with her because of it, but her personal favorite is
Captain Marvel. When she ends up getting her powers, she's actually kind of hallucinating and wants to be seen more as the classic Miss Marvel, who is the stereotypical idea of pretty and perfect. So her powers actually allow her to shapeshift into Miss Marvel's body. She then ends up saving a young woman's life, and everyone's very curious as to why Miss Marvel has reverted back to her previous identity, where now she is Captain Marvel in this. However, eventually Kamala realizes that she can't use another superhero's name and face to save people, so she ends up identifying herself as Miss Marvel, but she makes her own new costume. Like I said, I really enjoyed this. It was super cute, it was very fun, and my only complaint was it was too short. I want more. I cannot wait to go to Madness and buy the next issue because I loved it and I want more of it. Happy Sunday, everybody. I've ended up reading almost all of Sadie in like the last 2 days and I'm really enjoying it. But this story essentially follows this young woman named Sadie who has recently gone missing while trying to find the man who she believes murdered her sister, and then also follows a podcast that is investigating Sadie's disappearance. This book is so heavy. Like right out of the gate, I just want to say this book deals with pedophilia and abuse. It's a bit emotional. Like I've definitely hit some points where I'm just sitting in my car listening to it and I'm like torn between wanting to cry and scream. But that being said, I'm really enjoying it. It's really interesting. I've never read any other book with this kind of point of view before. It seems as though when we learn something from Sadie's perspective on like the next episode of the podcast, we end up seeing it from the podcast side and they learn a little bit more about the mystery of what happened to Sadie. 2 more hours in the audiobook and I can probably finish that tonight. I do want to mention how I originally said that the podcast was similar to that of Serial, or at least that's what I had heard, but having listened to a good amount of true crime podcasts, personally, I think I would more equate it to Someone Knows Something by CDC Radio. I just feel like that has a more similar style to this. That isn't really a big difference. I'm just a true crime podcast fan, so like I could tell the difference, but other people probably wouldn't, and it doesn't matter that much. So yeah, I'm gonna work on finishing that tonight, and then I'm gonna hopefully have this edited and up for y'all tomorrow. The reading rush starts tomorrow, so I need to finish this in order to go ahead and get started on Cinder and the Saga of Achilles tomorrow morning. Bye guys, I'll see you next week.